How's it going, folks? Maximilian here, and welcome back to another episode of Real Talk, taking a variety of things within the games I'm playing between the fighting game community, shooting games, and a whole bunch of stuff, and talking about situations and stories that I might have in relation to it. So what I wanted to talk about today is kind of the competitive history of fighting games and what it has come to be now. What's nice is that a lot of the stuff that I remember of fighting games has been preserved in legacy by a lot of the guys that grew up in a similar environment and have grown up with fighting games today. And that's the talk of hype. For you guys that don't know what it means, I think the term hype is kind of a broad statement. Hype can be like hyping up something before it happens. Hype can be like the aftermath after something, and hype can be the excitement during something. It kind of can be all-encompassing at times, although I think the definition of it might be much more specific. The term is used pretty loosely nowadays. And I think with fighting games, that definition of excitement or competitive gaming is one of the best things that you could possibly have. I honestly think when it comes to all competitive gaming, and I've actually been in the side of competitive games and like versus games and multiplayer and this stuff for a very long time, and fighting games are the one that always stuck out with me. They were the one that was always really exciting, whether or not it was down to the last health bar and the last smidgen of health in the final match. There's just something about it that is way more intense and satisfying. Maybe it's like the lore, maybe it's like you can make a story out about what's happening right now. But whether it's the players, whether it's the characters, there's so much that's going on at the moment that it's that much more exciting that you can actually add all this depth to it. I never really got into competitive like StarCraft or, any of these like isometric style games or even competitive sports games, even though I was for a little while. It was mostly with like racing games and fighting games and a little bit of sports games, but fighting games is what stuck with me. And the reason I think this is preserved and why this excitement still is really exuded by the community nowadays is that the fighting game community, when it comes to like EVO and all these major tournaments, there's that level of excitement. Everyone is just waiting for something ridiculously hyped to happen. Whether or not it's that person that's using like a low-tier team or low-tier characters going up against somebody that's the best in the world and they eventually take a match, there will just be this huge explosion of energy all of a sudden, and it's just absolutely amazing. It's not like in some other games where you're kind of waiting for the eventual outcome and you're seeing somebody get beaten really bad for a long time, and then it's like, oh, they win, congratulations, and you have a golf clap. No, when it's cemented in final victory, anything can happen until that life bar is completely gone, and somebody can come back in a freaking heartbeat. This stuff, sure, it happens in other games, but the reason this is preserved and absolutely freaking amazing is because it came from arcades. Back in the day when you had arcades, people crowding around an arcade machine, whether or not it's like multiple cabinets or whatever at your local arcade, this element of excitement was always around, and people would gather and watch just to watch somebody play a character. I would literally go to specific arcades, not with the intention of playing, but just with the intention of checking the competition out to find out how people are playing characters, how people are playing this new game. I did this for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I did this for Third Strike for a very long time, and this was back in like the early 2000s when arcades were still fairly prominent. It was getting around the end of the arcade heyday, right around that point. However, it was very exciting. Like, you would always go and find a bunch of people just watching in awe about like how this person is using this character. And we kind of get access to that all the time now, which is something I might want to bring up in another Real Talk episode, is the access of top-level competition now when it comes to video games because of the internet. Let's store that one later for a later episode and keep on this hype subject. That element of excitement really was prominent in arcades where guys just blew up and screaming at local tournaments, and all this stuff was just so ridiculously exciting. Some arcades still are around, and some arcades have adopted consoles to try to, adapt with the evolution of competitive gaming, because they're mostly on consoles now. But it's that level of excitement. It's about hype. It's about being excited with something and really feeling paid off. Like whether or not you lose a match or win a match, and just acknowledging the fact that the sheer spectacle of what happened is going to entertain people for a really long time. I mean, sure, Justin Wong might be really disappointed the fact that he got, parried to hell by Daigo in that one Third Strike video, but he is actually cemented in a part of gaming history and ridiculously respected amongst all of, competitive gaming now. Everyone knows who Justin Wong is, so that could have had something to do with it, you know what I mean? It could have had, a motivating factor for him back in the day, and as well as the fact that people just know who he is. I mean, let's go Justin is kind of cemented in competitive fighting games now, too. It's just something to think about. The fact that this hype and excitement is so precious, and like I was saying, what I try to communicate on my channel, especially when it comes to fighting games, is that stuff is really important, guys. I get very excited, and I try to have a lot of high energy, even when it comes to, like, online games for the most part, and you really can see it in games like Third Strike and Marvel vs. Capcom 1, and I play those games online because they run really well online, and I can't really blame anything but myself. And I'm able to get really excited about certain moments and really hyped up about these characters, you know, whether it's getting crazy hype about Team Japanese Ass Men in Marvel vs. Capcom 1 or Minty Green Ken in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. There is a level of excitement that I'm trying to produce for you guys to let you know that this was all coming from something. This was all coming from an era of folks standing up, watching an arcade cabinet on a big ol' CRT monitor, and a bunch of other dudes around talking about what's going on and getting very excited at the same time. It still exists today, and it still exists in weekly tournaments, and that's why you tune into weekly tournaments, to watch these ridiculously hype things happen. A lot of folks tune into the fighting game community for its drama, because it is the most drama-filled of all the gaming communities, and that's exactly what I try to avoid. I try to talk about things that happen, but I don't want to dwell on them, and I don't want to, like, have that be the big thing about what's going on. I think what needs to be preserved is the excitement and the hype of fighting games, and if you guys have kind of gotten that as a result of watching my videos over the past, many years now, I do try to generate excitement in almost everything I do, just to get you a little bit excited about playing fighting games and going out and trying this stuff, because, in my opinion, it's worth it to get excited. You're playing the best genre of games on the planet. Hopefully you guys agree, and hopefully you understand where I'm coming from. If you want to hear more about Real Talk, I'll leave a link in the top right with previous episodes. And if you would like me to discuss something within the community, or my personal preference within fighting games or other competitive games, leave a comment below and I'll try to tackle it in a later episode. I'd appreciate any comments or thumbs up. My name is Maximilian, and I'll see you next week.